to Our Mornings. Well, as many of you will know, the topic of obesity and weight management often comes up on Our Mornings during our newspaper review, because so often there are articles with some quite shocking statistics about obesity in the UK, both in adults and in children. And anyway, on one particular morning when we were discussing this, we received a really interesting email from a lady who had not only lost over 60 pounds over a 12-month period, but has also started a ministry, a weight loss ministry called Fit for Life Forever. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the program this morning Sue Prosser. Sue, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Do you have an okay trip in this morning?
It's fine. It was
Good.
really fine, yes.
It's great you could be here. Well, I've had a chance to look at your book, which is going to be published in May, and it's really interesting because at the start you start off in a really dramatic way and you explain how one cold January morning you stood on the scales and you were absolutely shocked to discover your weight, which was just over 14 stone at that time, and you were filled with just such shock and such disappointment that at that stage you cried out to God, and He has since revealed to you what has now become a ministry for you about weight loss. So I wonder if you could start off just by telling us a little bit about your story, starting with that experience.
That was in January 2004, and it was about 2 months after my husband and I had returned from Africa, where we had gone expecting to be in missionary work for 5 years. We've worked as missionaries in short-term missions for about 30 years now. And we've lived and worked in Africa, so we felt quite relaxed about what we were letting ourselves in for. And so we'd gone out there in June 2003, but things just hadn't worked out. Now, I was probably about 12 and a half stone, even at that point, because I'd been overweight or obese most of my life. But we came back towards the end of October, and I didn't have any weighing scales at that point, and it was only in January that I bought some. But I was aware that I was putting weight on, and I was buying clothes that were size 20 for the first time in my life. And so when I cried out to God and said, God, you know, I've made so many attempts to lose weight, and I've lost weight, but I've always regained it, and each time I've lost weight more slowly, and each time I've gained weight more quickly and added on to my previous all-time high.
So there's a photo of you at the moment on the screen for the viewers. This is the before shot.
Yeah.
So that was at that time, was it?
This was in January 2004.
Okay.
I mean, I can't believe that I actually posed for that photograph.
Well, it's great because now we can compare it with the after shot, and I think it's just about to be shown. Here we are. Wow, what an amazing transformation that is.
That was
It's
60
incredible.
pound loss over just 12 months.
It's absolutely incredible.
And the amazing thing is that it was without dieting in the conventional sense of the word.
Amazing.
But when I cried out to God for help, I mean, I'd done that before as a Christian. Whenever I'd embarked on a diet, I'd asked God to help me stick to the diet. And to give God His due, I believe He did help me. But that only compounded the sense of guilt and shame when I then put the weight back on. And what I didn't realise at that point was that diets, by their very nature, do set you up for a fall. And that they basically, for the vast majority of us, don't work at all.
It's really interesting, Sue, because in your book you actually go into that, and I was fascinated by the statistics surrounding it, because out of every 100 dieters, 10 may succeed in achieving their goal weight, but of the 10, 8 are probably going to regain the weight over the next sort of 5 years.
That's right.
So that if you think about it, 2%, maintaining that over a long period is such a low amount of people, such a low proportion. It's incredible, and it does show that diets really don't work. Can you explain why they don't work?
There's many reasons why they don't work. I think one thing, as soon as somebody goes on a diet, they immediately focus on food. And that constant obsessive focusing on food just highlights the very things that you're not allowed to eat. And it builds up within the individual a sense of deprivation. That deprivation is going to make you hanker after the very thing that you can't have. So when you have a really bad day, and this has been building up and creating tension inside of you, dieting is a stressful experience. Then it just causes you to just throw in the towel and say, oh, I've got to have something, and you go for the very thing that you've been depriving yourself of. That's part of the problem. Another thing is that diets, by restricting your calorie intake to such a degree, actually do slow down your metabolism. And I think so much many people are aware of, but the actual science of why that happens is also quite interesting, because our fat tissue has a hormone attached to it that actually has a memory. So the first time that you diet, that hormone is ignorant, if you like. It's never been this way before.
Okay.
And so you do lose weight. And the first time a person goes on a diet, they will, generally speaking, lose weight quite easily.
Okay.
But then on any subsequent diet, that hormone remembers what happened last time and puts you into that starvation mode, which means that for your energy needs, the body is not going to release the fat tissue, but will look elsewhere for it. And where does it look? It looks to your muscle tissue.
Okay.
And to lose muscle tissue is the worst thing we can possibly do. It's like being in a log cabin and feeling cold and saying, oh, I think I'll burn some of the wood that the cabin's made of.
I see.
It becomes an ever-increasing problem.
Yes, yeah.
And so your muscle burns up to about 5-6 times as many calories as your fat tissue does. So if your muscles are being depleted because you are starving your body, basically,
yeah.
you're actually removing the very furnace that's going to burn the calories.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can actually see when you explain it that people really get themselves into a vicious cycle.
Absolutely.
In that sense. And I mean, another factor here is that if people are exercising and basing their weight on their scales, it's a problem because obviously